There is a bread born from one of the darkest forced marches in American history, and it still shows up at celebrations today. It sits at number 2 on our list. The people who first made it had no choice, and what they created has lasted over 150 years. One group of people had been making a survival food at number 6 long before settlers arrived, and the chemistry behind it took Western medicine another 100 years to understand. And the so-called free lunch at number 12 was not generosity. It was one of the oldest traps in American business history. When you look at what people ate on the frontier, you begin to understand something true. They were never short on will, only short on supplies. Number 25, son of a gun stew. When a calf was slaughtered on the drive, the cookie wasted nothing. Heart, liver, tongue, and brain all went into the pot. The real secret was the marrow gut, the fourth stomach of a nursing calf, which released natural enzymes that thickened the stew into a creamy broth without any flour. In polite company, it was son of a gun stew. Around the fire, the name was rougher. The camp cook carried a Remington revolver to guard his kitchen. Number 24, sourdough flapjacks. Sourdough was the heartbeat of the frontier kitchen. The starter, a living culture of wild yeast, had to survive every cold night and long mile, sometimes tucked against the cook's body to keep it from freezing. When it worked, flapjacks came out golden and tangy. When weak, they came out flat and dense, earning the name sinkers. The fermentation added B vitamins to a diet that had almost none, and a dead starter was a camp-wide emergency. Number 23, blue corn mush. The Navajo people had been making this long before any settler crossed the Missouri River. Juniper ash stirred into ground, blue corn triggered nixtamalization, which unlocked calcium and niacin the body could not otherwise absorb. Western science would not understand this for another century. In the high desert, where food was scarce and winters brutal, that knowledge kept communities alive. A warm bowl of blue corn mush was not a humble side dish. It was generations of survival wisdom. Number 22, Chuckwagon coffee. Frontier coffee started with green beans roasted in a skillet, where one burnt bean could ruin the whole batch. Grounds were crushed with a rifle butt and boiled directly in water. Cooks dropped in a clean eggshell to pull the grounds to the bottom. By the late 1860s, Arbuckle's pre-roasted beans were so common that cowboys used arbuckles as another word for coffee. A pound cost 15 to 25 cents in 1897, down from over $1 just decades before. Number 21, pinyon cakes. In the high deserts of the Southwest, the pinyon pine produced oil-rich nuts every autumn. Navajo and Pueblo families harvested them together, grinding them into a dense paste shaped into cakes that stored through winter. These cakes were packed with healthy fats and protein in a region where cold weather and scarce game left few other options. The harvest was a community effort with whole families working together. One good pinyon season could mean the difference between making it through winter and not. Number 20, wasna. The Plains tribes had been making wasna for generations before the first wagon train rolled west. Dried bison meat was pounded fine, mixed with tallow, and combined with crushed choke cherries. The result lasted years without spoiling and delivered protein, fat, and vitamin C in one dense handful. Lewis and Clark relied on it in 1804 when game ran out. When the government destroyed the bison herds in the 1870s, they were not just removing an animal. They were dismantling the foundation of an entire way of life. Think about the last time you opened your pantry and felt like there was nothing to eat. Now imagine your pantry is a saddlebag and the nearest store is 400 miles away. That was the daily reality for the camp cook, and he solved it every single morning before sunrise. Number 19, portable soup. When Meriwether Lewis prepared for the 1804 expedition, he purchased crates of portable soup, concentrated beef stock boiled down to a rubbery solid that could be rehydrated on the trail. The men preferred fresh game, but when game ran out, that slab kept them going. Lewis spent roughly $250 on it, equal to several $1,000s today. It was the 19th century's answer to the bouillon cube, and without it, the expedition may not have made it. Number 18, boudin blanc. Toussaint Charbonneau, the French-Canadian trapper who traveled with Lewis and Clark, was the expedition's primary cook. His most valued preparation was boudin blanc, a mild white sausage made from bison intestines stuffed with meat, fat, and rice. It brought European culinary tradition into the middle of the American wilderness. Meriwether Lewis wrote about it with genuine enthusiasm in his journals, which says something for a man eating dried compressed soup on most days of the journey. Number 17, water pie. The first printed recipe for water pie dates to 1871. Water, flour, sugar, butter, and nutmeg poured into a raw crust and baked until it set. No fruit, no milk, no eggs. Families made this during droughts and hard winters when even milk was beyond reach. The women who set this on the table were not offering something lesser. They were offering everything they had. In an 1850s mining camp, a single egg cost close to $1, roughly $35 today. Number 16, vinegar pie. When lemons and fresh fruit were gone, frontier bakers reached for apple cider vinegar. The acidity, balanced with sugar and eggs, mimicked citrus well enough to satisfy a craving that had no other answer. These were called desperation pies, and that name was honest. The combination produced a custard that held its shape and delivered a bright, tart flavor. In a kitchen stripped to almost nothing, making dessert at all required real skill. Ingenuity was the one ingredient that never ran short. Number 15, election cake. Election cake traveled west with families who carried recipes entirely in their heads. A yeast-based fruit cake dense with dried fruit and warm spice, it was baked by women and brought to the gathering place on voting day. Women could not vote, but they could bake. Through election cake, they put their labor at the center of a public event. It cost real flour and real time. In a country that did not count their votes, it was a way of being counted anyway. Number 14, spotted pup. At the end of a long day, when the fire burned low and the work was done, the cookie sometimes brought out a Dutch oven of spotted pup. A rice pudding with dried raisins, sweetened just enough to remind a man that life had some good in it. For men eating salt pork and beans every single day, this was close to luxury. To the crew sitting around that fire, it meant far more than the ingredients added up to. Food has always been about more than staying alive. It is about belonging somewhere and feeling like someone cares enough to cook for you. Out on the open range, a good meal was the closest thing most cowboys had to home. The best cooks knew that and never forgot it. Number 13, miner's pot pie. The boomtowns of Arizona and California in the 1860s were rough, dusty places, and miners needed food that was hearty and portable. Pot pie built from canned meat and vegetables fit perfectly. The thick crust kept dust out and held heat in. Canned goods were made possible by the expanding railroad, and a miner willing to spend could eat something that felt civilized. A single can of meat in an 1850s camp could cost the equivalent of $100 today. Number 12, pickled eggs. Walk into a saloon in Dodge City or Tombstone in the 1880s, and you would find a jar of pickled eggs on the bar, preserved in vinegar and beet juice, sitting at room temperature for weeks. They were part of the free lunch. What the owners never advertised was that the salt was calculated to make every man in the room thirsty. A nickel beer sold 3 times as fast when the food was free and salted. The free lunch was never free. Number 11, hardtack and gravy. Hardtack was flour and water baked until it could survive months in a saddlebag without spoiling. It was nearly impossible to eat straight. Soldiers and pioneers broke it into a pan and soaked it in Mormon gravy, a simple mix of milk, flour, and grease. Some soaked it in coffee instead. Biting hardtack unprepared could genuinely break a tooth. The U.S. Army issued it by the pound, and during the Civil War, it became one of the most defining and dreaded tastes of the era. Number 10, game jerky. Before refrigeration, the only way to carry meat across hundreds of miles was to remove the moisture entirely. Venison, elk, antelope, and bison were sliced thin and dried in the sun or over a low fire for days. The result was traded like currency on the frontier, with a pound of good dried meat buying tools, ammunition, or passage. Indigenous peoples had been making jerky for centuries. and their techniques were the foundation every cowboy and drover built their supply run upon. Number 9. Prairie oysters. Every spring, cattle ranches held their branding season, days of hard, dusty work rounding up and castrating calves. The testicles of young bulls did not go to waste. Peeled, sliced, and fried in cast iron over an open fire, they were served to the crew when the work was done. Cowboys called them prairie oysters or Rocky Mountain oysters, and eating them at branding was a tradition as reliable as the season itself. They were high in protein, and crews genuinely looked forward to them. Number 8. Corn dodgers. A corn dodger was a dense biscuit made from cornmeal, salt, and water, fried hard in the same pan as the morning salt pork. The rendered fat soaked into the crust and gave it its only real flavor. The name came from the way a man would dodge one into his pocket and pull it out at midday without stopping. No plate, no fire. They could be made in under 10 minutes, and in a world where stopping meant falling behind, that speed mattered most. Number 7. Fried salt pork and beans. Salt pork, called sowbelly, was the caloric anchor of the West. Sides of pork were packed in heavy brine to kill bacteria and keep the meat stable for months. Before cooking, it had to be soaked to draw out the salt, then fried until the fat rendered into the pan. Pinto beans went in next, soaking up every drop. A barrel cost $100 in an 1850 mining camp, close to $3,500 today. Number 6. Fried calf brains. Rich, creamy, and high in fat, calf brains were breaded in cornmeal and fried in lard. For miners and drovers burning thousands of calories daily, the dense fat delivered lasting energy quickly. They required almost no preparation time, making them practical on the trail. The texture was soft and mild, nothing like the tough muscle meat that filled most of a cowboy's plate. For a man in the saddle since before dawn, this was about as good as a meal got. Number 5. Squirrel fricassee. In the wooded country along the Ohio and Missouri River valleys, a skilled hunter could have squirrel in the pot before the rest of camp finished their coffee. The meat was browned in fat first, then simmered in thick pepper gravy until the tough fibers gave way. It was a French cooking method settlers carried west from memory. After weeks of dried meats and hard biscuits, fresh squirrel and pepper gravy was something worth sitting down slowly for. That bowl was worth more than its ingredients. Number 4. Buffalo roast. Before the great herds were nearly gone in the late 1870s, bison was the central food source of the plains. Buffalo meat is leaner than beef and turns tough if cooked fast. The Lakota and other plains nations used long, low methods that kept it moist and flavorful. Early settlers who cooked it like beef were often disappointed. Those who learned from the tribes found it rich, slightly sweet, and deeply satisfying. The near extinction of the bison was a deliberate effort to eliminate the foundation of plains life. Number 3. Rabbit stew. Rabbit was one of the most dependable sources of fresh protein on the trail. It was common nearly everywhere, small enough to cook quickly, and lean enough to pair well with wild onions or whatever root vegetables a cook could pull from the ground. After days of salt pork and dried beans, a bowl of rabbit stew smelled like something from a real kitchen. Settlers on the Oregon Trail noted that a fresh meal lifted the whole group's spirits in a way no dried provisions could. Number 2. Fry bread. In June of 1864, the Army forced roughly 10,000 Navajo men, women, and children on a 300-mile march to a government reservation, an event known as the Long Walk. The land could not support the crops they had always grown. The government issued white flour, lard, salt, and sugar, foods many had never worked with. Out of those 4 ingredients, they created fry bread, a flat fried dough that filled the belly when nothing else could. Today it is served at celebrations, but many communities carry the full weight of where it came from. Number 1. Sourdough. Long before grocery stores, before packaged yeast, before a man could buy what he needed off a shelf, there was the sourdough starter. A living culture of wild yeast and bacteria, fed every day and kept alive through every cold night and long mile. Chuckwagon cooks tucked it against their bodies in winter to keep it from freezing. Bakers on the Oregon Trail passed pieces of their starter to friends along the way, sharing something genuinely alive. Charles Goodnight built his Chuckwagon system in 1866, partly around keeping that starter alive on the move. A dead starter left a crew with nothing warm and nothing that rose. When you hold sourdough bread today, you are holding something that belongs to a long line of people who refuse to let the fire go out. The men and women of the Wild West built something real from almost nothing every single day. That determination, that refusal to quit, deserves to be remembered. Which one of these 25 recipes do you think you could pull off out on the trail? Let us know in the comments.